Welcome to Beyond Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Petrellis, and I'm super excited for today's guest. I actually met this guest at something that was really cool for us, and I'm sure it was really cool for her, but at a wrestling event. It was our first wrestling event we've ever been a part of. And what makes a wrestling event so important is your ring announcer. And she was spot on when we met her. She was great. And we were able to chat with her a little bit afterwards. And the more homework I did on this guest, the more I realized that this guest is tremendous. Their work ethic is unbelievable. We were just talking about that off the air a little bit, but very involved, a great personality, and I think is going to have a lot of success as they continue. I'm just going to read a few things here. I want to be accurate. I don't want to misread, so I'm going to read right from my notes. But creator of Sweat Energy, as a boxing ring announcer, I mentioned to you guys a wrestling ring announcer. I think that might have been her first time actually doing it. Also works for NESN, Dirty Water TV, and Meet Boston. So without further ado, our guest today is Margaret Cresta Griffin. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, and I have to say, I love how you said Margaret because a lot of times people that aren't from this area will say Margaret, and it's like it's Margaret. Like it's just like
Yeah, you
that's how you
have to. I
say
mean, the other way sounds too like oldish.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with you. Well, welcome to the podcast. We're super excited to have you on here. And I mentioned it right when I was introducing you, how impressed I am with so much that you're involved in. But I want to sink our teeth first into kind of how we met, and then we can kind of go from there. But wrestling, Royal Crown Wrestling in Medford, that's where I grew up. Medford, that's where I teach and everything else. So it was kind of be able to cool to cover a wrestling event, a dream of ours. That's something we've talked about as a podcast to get involved in. And we met you there, the ring announcer. I mean, you were busy that night. They had a birthday they were celebrating, a fake contract signing, all sorts of stuff. You were very busy that night. But was that your first gig of wrestling, ever doing something like that?
No, so I actually have done all of Royal Crown Wrestling shows. So they have,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I don't remember when the first one was, but they do them like every other month. So I would say there's been a couple, not like a tremendous amount, but there's been definitely, it wasn't my first one.
Yeah. Okay. So I know you're involved with like the boxing ring announcing, the wrestling. I mean, is wrestling something you ever grew up watching or kind of knew about, or is that like something you just jumped into a different world?
Yeah, so I grew up with brothers, so we definitely would watch it. I mean, back in the day, it was like everything. We had like the
Yeah.
action figures and like the ring that we'd play with. So I always loved Stone Cold Steve Austin. I don't know what it was with him, but for some reason he was my favorite. Like if an ice cream truck went by, I would like get that ice cream. So like, I don't know, like he just was like I liked him a lot.
Yeah.
And so like, like Kane and The Rock and all like that time, I loved. And then, as I got older, you get busy, you do a bunch of different things. I wasn't necessarily like, watching it like I was when I was a kid. But like now, like even before I got asked to do wrestling, I would watch Raw or SmackDown every once in a while. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily like every week. I know some people are pretty religious about it. But yeah, like I had an idea of like how it's changed and stuff like that. So when I got the opportunity to do it, I was like, oh, this is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned some of the biggest names. I mean, that's like the era of wrestling for me too. When I went to college, I definitely fell off a little bit. I feel like it was hard to convince your roommate on Monday nights to put on Monday Night Raw like for like 3 hours, but I would kind of pay attention too. And it wasn't until I kind of came back home, got my job, and then I started watching it again. And I'm not like religious, but I do pay attention. Like obviously it came on Netflix the other night, so that was I was eager to
Yeah, I
kind of
watched
turn it
that.
on. Yeah, to see like what it was like, and the changes are cool. I mean, talk about the ring announcing for you. I mean, and even in the boxing world as well. There seems to be a lot of preparation. Obviously, you got to mention names correctly. People want you to be introduced a certain way. You got to make sure that you say everything correctly. So there is a lot of preparation. And I know from watching wrestling. I mean, I've watched even with UFC, like announcers sometimes can really like juice up what that matchup is and make it even meatier. So talk about the preparation, the work, how you got involved, that whole umbrella, I guess, of announcing.
Yeah. So I think I have to like think back of when I first started ring announcing, but I want to say it was definitely I was doing it in 2023. I know that for sure. And so I started doing it with boxing, and I'll make a very like long story kind of short, but I with content creation on social media, I had done some content creation. It was a campaign for PFL, which is MMA. And I think there was like a championship coming up and they wanted just to like promote it more. So I started to share that online just for that campaign. And so they kind of like put me in the combat sports light, I think. And then there was someone in our area, his name is Ed Brady. He was like preparing for a big fight that was happening in Cranston, Rhode Island. And it was like their first, it was like out of COVID, their first like outdoor like boxing event in like maybe 50 years. Don't quote me
Yeah,
on that,
yeah.
but like something along those lines. And they needed someone to interview the fighters. So I had met him at a Roadie Foodie event. I actually kind of knew him prior, but we kind of got reconnected and know him very well. And he asked me to do it. And I was like, that's cool. And I believe this was actually even before I started doing things with Dirty Water. I may have done like one or two with NESN, but maybe
Mhm.
not. It was still very new to me. And so, you know, I didn't really have a lot of direction or information. So I felt pretty unprepared, to be honest, when I did it, and it did not feel good at all. And I was nervous. But I had to interview these fighters that I really knew nothing about because again, it was kind of like a quick win thing. I just ended up there. But one of the people that I interviewed, it was the last one, was the promoter of CS, which is a promotion company. And so his Jimmy Birchfield Sr. And you know, we connected. I actually ended up doing some nutrition for his fighters. And so that's kind of how I got involved with it. He needed a ring announcer like a year or so later. For some reason, thought of me.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
You know, it
that's
was a
incredible.
surprise to me too.
Yeah, I mean, so what's so interesting, just to rewind, I mean, that's an amazing story. To rewind that a little bit, I mean, we have a lot of young guests that come on here and people that are trying to, you know, in the high school world, make it to that college level, and even the college athletes that we have on here talking about making their next steps and so on. But you kind of got thrown into a situation and you didn't really know what to expect, but you made an impression. I mean, for you, if you can remember, like, talk about being put in a situation like that, like what you remember, like, oh man, this is kind of like my first gig. I got to pretend like I know what I'm talking about and that I belong here. I mean, what was like strategy? Because you obviously made a great impression. Here you are at the end of that story saying, yeah, someone thought of me a year later from when they met me before. So I'm just curious, like how you kind of rolled with that a little bit.
I mean, I was like, I don't feel like I have like, I was nervous for sure. So
Yeah.
like, you know, I was excited for the opportunity, and I felt fine. And then I got there, and like everyone was ready to go to be interviewed. So it wasn't like oh, we got to chat a little bit, and then we
Right.
sit, you know, like it was like okay, like sit down, we're like recording, and it was actually going to be played on UFC Fight Pass because at the time, CS had a, even though they were boxing, they had showed boxing on UFC Fight Pass. I don't think they really do that much now at all. They might have like one promotion, but like that's because they sponsor that fighter. But so like, you know, it was if I was prepared, like if I knew who I was interviewing, I would feel like fine because I could just resort back to my questions. Like I actually even had like a little like notebook. So like it wasn't like I had to remember everything, but
Yeah.
the so Ed Brady would be like, oh, you can ask him like this. But like as soon as he would ask me the question, I was like, I couldn't even remember the question anymore. Like I was like, oh my God. And also I think the part that like stressed me out was that like they're such like reputable, like people really like look up to these people, these fighters, and you know, even the promoter. And I'm like, I feel like I'm not giving them the respect that they deserve. That was the part. And I'm also hard on myself. So
I was
like
just
my
gonna
head.
say that's an internal struggle, probably more than like a reality, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, and but the thing is the interviews like at the end of the day did go well because the fighters, I'm sure were everyone gets like not necessarily nervous, but they like they want to they're not thinking about really me. They're thinking about them and what they're gonna say. So like they all gave phenomenal answers to the questions that I asked. And so like it was able to kind of like build on like what they said. And you know, we could stop and go. It wasn't live. So you know, I felt really unprepared, they gave good answers and they were able to talk a lot. So that helped me. I was like, oh, thank God. Because sometimes you can interview someone, I mean, even with like NESN and Dirty Water, like sometimes you just interview just, you know, managers of a bar. And sometimes they just don't really know how to talk or that maybe they're nervous, they're not used to doing it. And they'll give you very short answers. And you're like, oh, okay, like I'm going to have to pull. So with these fighters, they all had awesome things to say and like really interesting topics that they like, talked about. So that made my job easier. And there was a relief with that. I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, I mean, it's so funny. I mean, I hear you say like some people give you short answers. Like, God, that's like sometimes on here when I ask a question
Yeah.
that I think is like juicy and they're gonna sink their teeth into it and they give you a quick answer. And I'm like, okay. And I want to try to like build that because I think that's so important to be said, like what it is I'm trying to get them to kind of talk about a little bit. But that's great. And obviously you're now more involved in kind of understand now that you continue to be a part of it. I mean, how does a preparation go for you on that now that you are kind of like in stride, you know exactly what you're doing like to the audience? How do you now prepare for an event that's coming up that's a big fight?
Yeah, so with boxing and wrestling are definitely, in my experience, been a lot different. Um, in both, I will say a lot of the times you don't know all of the information to like sometimes the day before. With wrestling, it's like when you walk through the door, and I'm like, that's to me, it's like
Yeah.
it's stressful because you have so much time to like get all this information. But with boxing, like at least like the night before the weigh-ins. And that's because sometimes the bout changes, people like don't weigh in the
Right.
way, or it gets changed last minute, they pull out. So there's like a number of reasons I can't even find an opponent. So as soon as I know all of the names, like but usually that's the night before, I know for sure I can make my cards. And I will just, put all the information, all the statistics, where they're from, professional record, and then usually we'll like run through it. But before that, to be preparing my
Yeah.
voice, I didn't come from being a singer or anything like that, so this is like a lot new to me. And why I say singer is because I've realized that they're kind of similar in a sense of like using your voice, and I'm sure it's similar with even podcasting or even reporting. Like when you become like really good at something, you have to really learn how to use your voice, and that's not using your throat, it's using like your diaphragm and different parts. So it's still something I'm learning because it's like for different breathing. And
Yeah.
so like sometimes I'll like practice like vocal warm-ups. I mean, I shouldn't say sometimes, I'll always do that, especially the week leading up. I'm like definitely more dialed in. But like I have in some fights coming up that I'm like, oh, I need to like practice every single day because I feel like that is how you really are great. And like I go through my spells where like I'm practicing every single day, and then there are times where you're just busy or you get sick or things pop up and you're like, oh, I didn't practice in a week, like damn.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think it's like it's like getting your reps in, just continuing to do it and do it and do it, and listen to yourself back, which is never fun sometimes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just like hearing like, oh, I didn't like how that sounded. So yeah, and then when it comes to wrestling, like I said, in my experience, and I feel like this might be the norm with like indie wrestling anyways, is you will walk in and like I'll have an idea of who's actually like on the bout sheet. Like I know that, but like I said, things change. But the order, usually I don't know the order. Like
Yeah.
it'll like be online the order, but that's not the real order. And then who's gonna win the match. I gotta find that out. Who's getting introduced first, who's the heel, who's the baby face. Like that changes. Like even though they might be known as like the baby face, like oh well tonight they're the heel. So like you're like okay. So there's a lot of like last minute,
Yeah.
like thankfully I am someone that like can handle that, because I think that for like someone that's very like type A, that would not work. I'm
You're
a
like,
little
what?
like
This is changing what right
yeah,
now? Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I don't want it to change. But I understand, like I get that that's how it goes, and I am definitely someone that does well under pressure, or like it's a bad thing to do. Like I think it's the ADD in me. Like I'm like I always, like I said, like I always wait till last minute to do things, and then I can do so much. But it's probably not the healthiest way to be. But in a sense, like wrestling, hey, it kind of helps because I'm like, okay, like I gotta get this done in this much time. Like we have an hour to go on, and I still don't know who's the first one going out. So
Yeah. No, I
little
mean that's all. I mean, I love that world. Like, God, I said, even just being a part of Royal Crown Wrestling that day to put a video together to like post on our story, like so many of my buddies would text me aside, they're like, "You must be living your dream right now." I was like, "Yeah, I'm ringside, like on the other side of the cage is like I'm not a fan. I'm not sitting there in the first row. Like I'm on the other side. It's just cool to kind of be a part of that. So for you living that, that must be amazing. Is there a name that you love saying? Like, is there a name that you've announced so far that just stands out to you that you've practiced and you're like, I've pelted this name out. I announced this name really well, or is that something you never really thought of?
No, there's definitely favorites for sure.
Yeah,
There's one that I like saying. Like some names sound better with different pitches and stuff. Like some of them
right.
just come out like they just have more to them, and
Yeah.
some of them are harder to say. But yeah, let me say Alejandro Elabusador Paulino, and it comes off. It's good. There's a lot there to use, you
Yeah.
know.
I love
So
that. I love that. Because
so
I love listening to announcers sometimes when they really get into saying someone's name or all their nicknames. And I'm like, God, that's so much work because you're on the spot in front of live people there, live people on TV, like trying to nail that and nail it like to the point to like get everybody juiced up too. So I wonder if ring announcers typically have fun names or like names that they just like love saying a little bit more.
oh
Um,
yeah.
and are you a big fan of it in general? Like you obviously you're ring announcing, but are you watching these fights? Are you invested? Do you typically kind of like understand the sport real well when there's the end of the match? You're like, I think this person probably won. Like, are you that like well
Yeah.
knowledged in it?
Oh yeah. For boxing, do you mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, for sure. I definitely watch it. And it's really fun, especially like it's when you get to know the fighters in the boxers or the wrestlers, it's all the same. But once you get to know them, you're invested in their storyline, their
yeah,
success. So, of course, as a ring announcer, I'm biased. I have no say in who wins. I just have to tell you who wins. But like you have people that you're kind of rooting for in your head. And
yeah.
so, especially with working for like a specific promotion company, they have their fighters, so you start to get to know them. And you have a relationship with them, and so you want to see them do well. So yeah, there are like definitely like matches where you're like, oh yes, like I can't wait to see this one. I can't wait for them to like fuck this person up. But, like they would talk shit. So like I want them to win. Like they better win. Like and like the hardest part is like when it doesn't go in your favor and you kind of build a relationship with them. I'm like, ah. Like there are times I think about like I'll stand behind them and I have to read the results. And like, sometimes you add drama. So like you'll pause and there was one that it ended up being a draw, so it wasn't a big deal. But no one wants a draw either; they want to win.
Right.
So I remember like both of the boxers like turning around and looking at me, and I was like, oh, like it just was like a weird feeling. And I was like, I was happy at least it was a draw, not that the fighter that I was like friends with lost. But um, there's definitely that. It's you get involved for sure. So yes.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. I wondered that because, yeah, you are invested. I mean, you're getting to know these people, and then obviously you hear stories, and you're like, wow, the person came from this, or this happened to that person. Like,
Yes.
yeah, like absolutely, your heart takes over a little bit, and you become that. I mean, that's great. And obviously, I mentioned at the top, you are involved in so many different things. So I know we just kind of sunk our teeth into that, but I want to talk about some of the other things too. We'll kind of jump into NESN. I mean, I've canceled cable. I don't have NESN Plus, so I haven't been able to watch NESN for a bit. So I do miss it for sure. But I know that you're involved with Dirty Water TV and Meet Boston. How long have you been working for NESN for? And just talk about that. I mean, Dirty Water TV. God, I watched that. I've probably gone to so many places based off of Dirty Water TV, if I'm being honest. So definitely something I watched for a while. But talk about working with NESN a little bit, how fun that all is.
Yeah, so it's really cool. So like, all this kind of happened before I started ring announcing, I was doing NESN at that point. So
Oh,
like,
okay.
I said there was like a year in between, then I eventually became a ring announcer. So somewhere in between that, I definitely started because I had known I had done that, and that I would say probably helped me become a ring announcer because I had some on-camera reporting experience, although very different,
Yeah.
very, very different. One's live, one's not. So with Dirty Wires, how I got started. So their show is all about showing, lifestyle, entertainment, like what's going on in the city or in New England, and restaurants, you know, new openings, so
Right.
things like that. So it is really fun. So, you know, in the summer especially, like there's
Mhm.
always so many cool places that we get to go to. Like sometimes like I got to stay in Martha's Vineyard. Sometimes I haven't done it, but some of the times I go to Florida. And so they have like a reporter or two go there. But yeah, usually, you know, it's all year round. Like last January, I wasn't sure if we're going to do it again this year. I'm kind of happy I didn't have to, but at the same time, would have, who knows? But last January, we did the polar plunge and I had to jump into the ocean.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say I had to, but they were like, it would make good TV. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, I'll do it. So it was a polar plunge that we were covering at a restaurant. So yeah, it's really fun. There's a lot of cool things you get to do. I learned that I actually really enjoyed doing that while I had the chance to like start, and I should say I still do it. So while I had the opportunity to like get started with them. And so it's really cool. It's not a Monday through Friday job, which I'm blessed because it is, you know, I have a lot of other things going on and I can
Yeah.
able to do so many different things. So it's, you know, they'll have their new episode and then they'll send you like, hey, like who's available and if you want to do it, say, oh, I'll do it. And there's so many different segments within the episode. Sometimes we get to host it. So it depends, like whatever kind of is the
That's
situation.
cool.
It's always different. So that's fun. And then Meet Boston is, so I got that opportunity because they were looking for actually content creators to put their perspective of Boston out there. So like I kind of got brought in with like the wellness, active lifestyle, fitness kind of creator to show that in the city.
Yeah.
To be honest, although yes, I do that, like they kind of will send me at different places too. Like I'm like, oh, like we're making um I don't know, like candles or like just like it's not necessarily like I thought maybe I'd be more in that scene, but like we're kind
Yeah.
of all over to be honest
Doing
with you.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah, we're doing everything, which is fine. That's all fun stuff. But we get to, so we were supposed to pick our locations, which I was actually wicked excited about, but I understand that that probably was going to get too complicated because there are a bunch of us as creators on the show. So we now they send it to us and then we will go ahead and write the script, reach out, edit it. So we do
Mhm.
in like we do it all. So we shoot it, edit it, and write it and reach out to the
Wow.
yeah. So it's cool. I mean, it's definitely cool to be have all those credentials. Like, oh, this is what we've done for NESN and it goes on NESN. But that's why they wanted content creators because content creators do this on a regular
Yeah.
basis, so they know how to do it. But with dirty water, that's totally different. You just show up and you report. So
Yeah.
they're both different and they're both cool.
I mean, that is really cool. I mean, obviously, I mean, and you said it, you're a content creator in itself. And I think for us, we cover high school sports and we understood very early on that that was so niche. So it was like we were going to have our followers and then that was kind of it. So, like, what is it else that we want to get involved in and want to do? And now we're involved with restaurants, we do wrestling events. I mean, we cover so many different things and it's fun because it allows you to be creative. And as I hear you talking and saying a lot of the things that you're a content creator anyway. So you understand like what makes people stay on. And I was going to ask you, even in this, I kind of had in my notes. I think your music selection is phenomenal. I want to talk about that kind of
You
on the side, but because music's a big thing for me too. But you understand, you feel like as you progress, like as you've been doing Dirty Water TV or Meet Boston, do you just kind of feel like every time you go on there, I'm just like, I'm gonna be a little bit more me because I know for me, I'm so reserved sometimes because I'm a fifth grade teacher, like, so I kind of hold back on certain things or maybe don't get involved with certain things that I know from an Instagram standpoint could like shoot our followers way up or get our likes way up. But I stay away from certain things. But being a
yes,
content creator like yourself, I mean, do you find yourself just becoming more and more yourself every time you do this and just become so comfortable with the content that you're putting out for Nesson? But obviously it helps you on the side too.
for sure. I think with Meet Boston especially, and also even with Dirty Water, I should say, but Meet Boston, like the biggest thing was like they wanted you as you.
Yeah.
That was the whole point because they brought on so many content creators and their thing was your Boston, my Boston, your Boston are all different. We want to see it from your perspective.
Which is
So
cool. Yeah.
it is. And so it's cool to be able to do that, but it also gets a little bit tricky because you kind of default to like this is kind of how it needs to flow, and so you kind of start to make it feel like it is like a segment in the sense of like a reporter, and like they don't necessarily want that, but when
Yeah.
you're doing like a 2 minute, it's different than your 30, 60 second reel. So there's like it's a little bit of like you have to figure it out, but for sure, like I always think like how can I like be more me in this piece because I know this is what they're looking for. And then same with Dirty Water, and I think that just comes with, like I said, back to like the reps, it's like just continuing to do it. You just get better every time. With Dirty Water, it's like they absolutely want you to be you as well. But a lot of us will kind of go to like that reporter thing, and that
Right.
works too. And that is what it is. You are a reporter in that show, but they really want you to be you. So like I actually got to co-host a few shows in last year with my husband, and that was really exciting.
Yeah.
And we watched it back, and I was like, okay, like we're married, like we need like the chemistry to like come off screen, because you kind of go back into like the formalities of like
Right.
reporter, and you're like, what is that balance where it's not annoying, like a lovey couple, or like, but at the same time, like we are married, and like we should be like more natural with it. So I think it's like one of those things is like you reflect, look back, and then you are more comfortable doing it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a thing that you have to practice, I guess. But for sure, I definitely try to.
Yeah.
And
It's like, I
get
know
more
I,
comfortable.
yeah, you have to be. And I think that's like what I've realized with this more, even my interviews before, more like, do, like everything was just so, and I was like, God, I'm listening to it. I'm like, that's not even me who I am, like in real life. Like, this is crazy, you know? And I still struggle with it somewhat. Like you mentioned, like sometimes you get back into that, like more of like interviewee, interviewer thing, and you like catch yourself sometimes doing it. Like, ah, I gotta stop that. Like, so like you said, it comes with the reps, it comes with being able just to kind of get better at it. But I did allude to in your content creating and kind of seeing the videos that you put out there, your music selection's great. And I say that because I work really hard with our music on here. Like sometimes I'll make a video or I have a video in mind, whether I'm lining up like the music to the clips and making sure that it cuts at certain points, or I just throw a song on there to throw a song on there. To me, it's like people are going to last a little bit longer paying attention to what it is that you post if you have a song that is like catchy and they want to listen to the full 15 seconds or 10 seconds or 30 seconds, whatever you're posting, because the music catches them. I mean, am I off here? Like, do you feel that way? Because I just think your music's great.
No, I love that you say that because I've never really talked about that, or but I agree. I feel the same way. Like if I'm moved by a song, I'm inspired to create the content. So like that's like I will like say, yeah, I have like my playlist of songs that like I feel, like they just have something with the beat or like they're saying or the sound that I'm like, I don't know what it is or what you're even saying, but I really like this. So like I'll save it. And same with like on social media, if I hear like sounds that are songs that I like that maybe someone else used, I just like save the audio, save the audio. I have found that like in order for me to be inspired to create like any content, um, any video, like once I get the song, I'm like, I can do it. Without the song, I just like sometimes I can't, I don't have either I procrastinate. I just like it's hard
Interesting.
to create. So I love that you say that because I feel the same exact way. And I think it's so important. And yeah, anytime there's like when I create some content, like I'll try to like when a beat drops or the beat changes to like then
Right.
add the transition and stuff like that. Cause I feel like your ears are kind of like ready for it. So it's like give them what they're like ready for.
Yeah. It's funny because I create content for a boxing gym and I finally got like CapCut and CapCut's great, like obviously the template stuff, but there's something about me just like personally still editing it and like you mentioned the drops, like of just like still being the one in control of that and having a long enough of the clip that it makes that drop even better, like like when I do the boxing stuff, they love me there because I do it Sonny's Boxing, and the guy Danny owns a gym, he loves it because first of all his music selection's unbelievable when you go in there, like his music playlist for the boxers, like that place is like slamming, and I mean the music is a big part of it, but he's like, when I put reels, he's like, I love that song. That's a great song. Like he compliments it so much, and it means the world to me because I do put so much thought into like into
Yeah.
music, and that's
You
what
know,
caught me about your page.
it's funny. Actually, when we met at Royal Crown Wrestling, I like wasn't on my phone, but when I left, I saw a message from Sonny's Boxing, and he had mentioned you. He's like, "Oh, like Anthony be on podcast. Like he's great. Like he had said he does stuff with you, I think, or something like
Yeah,
that."
yeah,
And I was like, "Oh shoot!" Like because I saw you with your shirt on and stuff, and
yeah.
I said like, "Oh, Sonny uses responding to my story," but yeah, after I left, I saw that, and then we connected a little bit more after, but I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, he's great. Danny's great. He's like on his, I mean, he's has so many great ideas, and his gym is, I mean, I've been to boxing gyms, and boxing gyms are like most people think like Rocky, like like when you
Yeah,
go into box gym like that. And I do, I think there's something great about that nostalgia. But you walk into his gym and it is like state of the art, beautiful, like murals are beautiful. The he has like a wall of like all the biggest Sports Illustrated pictures or articles or boxing like all along the wall, banners for all his fighters that have won, like almost like you walk into a garden, like has banners for them.
that's
So
it.
it's just kind of like a cool, different feel. And as a content creator with that stuff, it's fun to walk in there because you're inspired. Like, all right, today I'm gonna get more shots by the mural. Today I'm gonna get more shots by the belts. Today I'm gonna get more in. Like, there's just
Mm.
never like bad spots there to kind of catch content. So it's a fun spot. Yeah, Danny's a great guy. He's a great guy. Um, I also wanted to kind of bring up and I noticed on your Instagram, I don't know a lot about this, but I more wanted to make sure that I mentioned it and give you an opportunity to talk about it. But the creator of Sweat Energy, I looked on your Instagram a little page with it. What is Sweat Energy? Talk a little bit about that and let our audience know what that's all about. Like we said, guys, she's involved in a bazillion different things, and that's why we have her on here today, truthfully.
So Sweat Energy is my fitness app. We also have recipes. So when I first got started on, or when I started gain some traction with social media and people want a little bit more from me, I started offering like complimentary challenges, like workout challenges, and like I had a lot of people that were interested in doing it. So we did it, and it was so fun. And so eventually, like I ended up doing it on another app, the Way Better app, and I was doing challenges, and those were really fun too. They were different, but they were like live videos. But like I didn't have control of the branding or anything like that. And the branding was a lot different than like my style, but it was still like it worked and it was cool, and people were motivated, and there was things that made you more motivated, like you could like bet on yourself. That was their
Yeah.
thing, way better. So like you could bet like whatever, $10 or something, or $20. And then if you finished the challenge and you had to prove it with like sweaty selfie photos, um, after each workout, you could like get money back. So like if you didn't, and you like the app knew like if you didn't send the picture by the end of the week, this many pictures, like then you're like out of the bet. So like you could actually earn money. So like it was cool. Like like it wasn't like a ton of money, but if more people finished, you would get less money. But if less people finish, you'd get more money, kind of thing.
Okay.
So but so it was fun. And then but like that kind of inspired me of like, like that would be really cool if I could do my own app. And so it's been like a whole long process. Like I started doing this like years ago, to be honest with you. And then I launched not this January that we're in, but the past one. And Sweat Energy is all about exercising to feel good physically and mentally. So it's not necessarily about having like this insane, PR every day. Although if you want to, you can. There's programs,
Yeah.
but it's more or less like even the evolution of like how I feel about fitness and stuff. Like we just want to, yeah, we want to look good, but we also want to feel good, and it does so much for our mental health. This does so much for us physically. So that was the philosophy about it. And you know I will say, I have to go on a tangent about it, but I remember when I like we all do this, we go through our flows, like you're maybe really motivated in the gym and then you kind of lose it. And
Mhm.
like I was going through like a time where I was like really losing that motivation, and I created a whole like brand on it, and I was like, oh, this isn't good because like I haven't been in the gym in like a month and this is not good. And so I was like, what is it about like working out that I actually really enjoyed? And I was just trying to find it for so long. And this was like, I would say like after COVID. I was actually motivated in COVID. And then after COVID, um, I think just like being out of the gym for so long,
Yeah.
I maybe just like kind of lost it a little bit. And it's just, you have to get back into it. It's how it
Yeah,
goes.
I
So
think your values while you're sitting inside, like things just change a little bit with all that. I get it totally.
yeah, so it was around that time, and so I was doing a lot of home workouts. Like I said, first I was so motivated, I loved it, and then just kind of dropped at one point. And so I was like trying to figure out what is it that I love about it. And so like I realized like there's like this, I call it like a climax, but there's like a moment where you're like working out, and in the beginning, like it's kind of sucks. Like for me, anyways, like I feel like I'm warming up, like kicking my legs, and like my legs sore, like it doesn't really move that high. Like I just feel sluggish. I'm like, oh, I gotta do this. Sucks. Like that's how I feel.
Yeah.
And then as you kind of continue in the workout and you kind of start to like maybe not break a sweat, but you're kind of breathing a little bit heavier.
Yeah.
And in that moment, like it starts to, you're kind of in it. And then it
Yeah.
kind of starts to feel good. Like you're in it to win it at that point. Like you're going to finish this workout. And so I call that kind of like the climax. And I feel like it's when you start to feel like that good energy. So that's where sweat energy came from, where it's like
Yeah.
that sweat energy. And when you hit that, you finish your workout, you're actually in a better mood. So then you're better and nicer to your partner, your friend, maybe your children. And so you transfer that good energy. So that's like what I was like, oh, like, it's so important, regardless if we're motivated or not, or even the physical part of the benefits of working out. It's just that mental, like you're a happier person, you're a better person. So like sweat energy is all about transferring that good energy.
I
So
like that a lot. And I think that's so important because a lot of times they always say the biggest thing to get someone to work hard, the hardest thing is getting someone to go. But I
yeah.
think it's beyond that. I think when you first like the first week you're back into it, like a New Year's resolution, like you get through that first week, that's an accomplishment. But then you wake up that Monday morning realizing that you got to do it again and again and
Yeah.
again and again, right? So I agree. I think sometimes it's like when you're just getting into that workout, you maybe get that first set in or that first quarter of mile you're running or whatever it is that you're doing. It's not until you kind of in it that you're like, all right, I got to finish this and I want to finish this at a faster time than I did the day before, or I want to be able to run a little bit longer than I did. Like, I get it. I mean, I think that's a great, like, catchy, like, yeah, I think that's a great idea. And I think that's a great point. Like I said, because most people, it is get them through the door, but sometimes to continue and the consistency is then what? Like, what's your motivation then? So I agree. I think it's great. Um, the last thing that I kind of want to ask you, and I ask a lot of guests on here, and it's a big reason why I had you on. I've been saying this all along. I mean, you're involved in a lot of different things. And so I ask this question always in two parts. Part one is who are you a little bit outside of all this? Like, what are your interests in life? What are things that you consider relaxed? Because it seems like you are go 365 days a year, and maybe there's a pocket of time that you do get to enjoy yourself and enjoy life and do the things that you do. So that's the first part I'm going to ask you. And then the second thing I'm going to ask you after is just what's your like advice to young people out there that are looking to get into the content creating world and all that. So let's talk about you personal first and then we'll jump into that.
Okay, so I love to hang out with my dog, Cora.
What
I
kind of
could
dog?
She's a Rottweiler.
Okay, okay, here we go. All
She's
right.
a big, like, cozy, like, I don't know if all dog owners like to hear teddy bear, but like she kind of is. Like she's so soft and cuddly and sweet and so playful. So I'm like, I wish she'd play, wish she'd cuddle more than she'd play sometimes. But I
Yeah.
know she wants to play and I want to cuddle, so we compromise. But I like being active if it's, outside the gym, I don't necessarily do this too much, but I would love to like go on more like trails and like hikes and stuff. I don't do it as much as I'd like. Checking out new restaurants, traveling. Oh my God, it's awesome. But I actually really like content creation.
Yeah.
Um, I love it. I think it's really fun to do. So sometimes I ask the question, like, if I had like $1 billion and like I didn't need to like work for money, like what are the things I currently do that I would stop, that I would still do? I guess that's what I said.
Yeah.
And so like puts a lot into perspective. And content creation is one thing I would still do. It might look different, but I would still do it in some aspect. Like I think I would still enjoy like doing fun projects where it is
Right.
recorded, I think,
Yeah.
in my own terms.
Yeah, and I think that's so important because like you said, like $1 billion. God, I would leave teaching tomorrow. tomorrow
Don't
if
tell
I
your
could.
students that.
I mean, I love teaching. Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah,
It
I'm good.
is like my biggest why for sure. But like, yeah, I mean, $1 billion. But the point I'm trying to make is that I would consistently and continue to do this because I feel like
Mhm.
this, what I'm doing, is not only feel good for me, but I think what we do and what we cover is feel good for other people. So yeah, I would have a hard time kind of giving up the whole content creating. And Beyond to me is like a brand, like I'm all in on it. So like you see my family life on there. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I put out there because I just like want people to understand who I am a little bit. And so I get that. Jumping to the other part of this question now. I mean, you obviously, with that being said, we talked about things that you enjoy on the side, and working is still kind of sort of that for you in a sense of content creating. What's your advice to young people out there that like want to make it in that world, whether it's content creating or becoming an announcer at the biggest stage or being able to open a business and run with it and create it? I mean, what's your advice to people out there when they want to get that journey going and started? What would you say to them now that you kind of understand it more?
For one, don't be like afraid to put yourself out there. Even on social media, people are not always in the beginning super understanding or supportive. We've come a long way with social media. People get it now.
Mhm.
But yeah, like you have to just do it and not feel a type of way about it. Like, oh, I didn't look good enough, or I didn't sound good enough, or this content's not that great because you see everyone else's. Or maybe my family or friends might make fun of me. You got to get past it. I had to, it's not fun and it's kind of embarrassing a little bit sometimes. But you have to just get past it and be consistent. And a lot of people ask me, content creation tips and advice. And sure, there are strategies and practices you can implement, but I mean, you got nothing without the consistency, and you got to do it. And if you're serious about content creation, you probably have to do it every single day or have content for every single day, which is a lot. And comes a business. But yeah, if you're just starting out, like if it's 2 times a week that you post, that's great. Try to go to 3, go to 4, maybe go to 5, and depending on your industry, maybe you don't need to do every single day, but you're gonna probably have to do it pretty close.
Yeah.
So that and yeah, just not be afraid of anything. I think one of the things I had learned, I had an incident that made me realize this, but just not to again be afraid of anything, because like fear, although it's true, we feel it in all of that, but a lot of times it is imaginary. Like even like going up to someone and saying, maybe for a guy, like asking a girl out, or even just like raising your hand in class. Like I was always someone that did not like doing that. I was
Yeah.
kind of quiet in the classroom. But like whenever I notice like I feel that way, I now will make myself do it because I'm like, oh, I noticed that I felt that way. So I have to like try to get past that. And so yeah, just like trying to train yourself to not be afraid of things, because it's
Yeah.
such a made up thing that holds you back. And in the end of everything, those things don't matter. And the more you put yourself out there and you're not afraid of doing that, the better chances you are with everything you want to do.
Right. I mean, the reality in your head sometimes is worse than the reality of what reality actually is, right? Like
Yeah.
it's so funny when you say that about like raising hands and stuff. Like I always tell my students at the beginning of the year, I was like, class participation is like, it's a decent part of how I grade you in here. I know kids are afraid, but you got to learn to take chances. And sometimes I'll call on kids who don't raise their hand, or I'll see a kid who somebody gets the answer right and you can tell they go, like they knew it and they were too afraid to raise their hand. And I always walk over when I catch that and being like, you wanted to raise your hand, but you were too afraid your answer was going to be wrong. And you were right. Like,
Yeah.
and so you try to like instill it there because you're right. It is important because sometimes you are the one holding yourself back more than you realize. And sometimes some people never realize that they're the ones who are the one who holding themselves back. And I know before we jump off here, we talked off here a little bit. You kind of have some event coming up, an event that's coming up in a maybe a couple weeks. I could be wrong if I made that up. But I know maybe you want to plug something or talk about something that you have going on. So I did want to give you that opportunity before we signed off because I forgot and now it just popped back into my head. So I wanted to
Oh,
give you.
so the brand new me challenge. That is
Yes.
a challenge that I actually look at my calendar. So let me just make sure I have the date right.
Sorry,
But
I didn't mean to put you on the spot
no,
like that.
I should know the date. I'm just I also just don't want to say it wrong. So yeah, brand new me challenge starts January 20th. It's all about shedding off our old layers, aka building new habits. It's a 66-day challenge because it takes 66 days to build a habit. This is exactly what we're trying to do. So in the app, it's basically the challenge. So you can stick to it for the 66 days. You can do them on the days that you want. There are workouts that you can follow along with me that just press play. You could also follow the gym program, which is exercises. So you just like hit next and you'll see them. There's also nutrition in the app. But the biggest thing is there's a community, there's accountability. So we're all doing it at the same time. And that I find to be such a huge piece to what is necessary to be successful is just having those people. You're seeing other people do it. I can do it too. I get honestly so motivated and like I'm like, they're doing it. I didn't even do my workout yet. Like
Yeah.
I'm still in bed and they already like, oh, this was a
Already
great
done.
workout. So it helps us like stay on track and stay motivated. So brand new me challenge is one of my favorite challenges. I've offered it for like the last 3 or 4 or something like that years. It's evolved over time. Now it's on the Sweat Energy app. And yeah, I'm excited to do it January 20th.
Very cool. All right. So January 20th, we'll make sure we get that out there for you as well. And we want to thank you for coming on here today. I mean it. Like, you know, meeting you at wrestling was awesome in itself because that was a cool experience for us. But then to kind of do my homework on you and just to see how much you're involved in, you're motivating for people like us, people like me, as smaller people that kind of see that it is possible to balance life and be able to do the things that make you happy. And you figure out how to carve that into your daily life and your routine and everything else. So definitely a motivating person, someone who motivates me, and I'm sure you're gonna have nothing but continued success. And we'll see you at Royal Crown Wrestling. We're gonna be there in March, so we'll see you for sure.
I'm excited, and I will apologize. I am sorry you've had to see me in, with lines over my face. I have like bars on my face. The sun is just right here, and I was like thinking about how I can change this the whole time, and I was like, it could just go wrong. So I'm just gonna leave it. So
It's
apologize.
fine. It's totally fine. I wouldn't even worry about it.
My eyes are squinting. It's so hard, but the sun, man, it goes up, goes down, and you have no sunlight these days.
It's
It's like
snowing yesterday, like you know what I mean? So it's just
you
yeah,
never know
don't.
what you're gonna get.
Well, listen, like it's like the wrestling theme, right? We could say it's like a mask, or it's like your announcing mask or something like that. Oh, something like that, right?
We'll go with that. Yeah, it's my new thing. You'll see me in March like this too.
That's it. That's it.
Paint it
Started here
off.
first. Remember, started here first. So guys, this is the episode here. We are excited this week. Check out, we are starting our docu-series with Malden Catholic Boys Basketball. We're covering their first game Tuesday night. So check out on our Instagram over the next 6 weeks, the docu-series we're going to have with them. We have Shawsheen coverage for basketball, Chelmsford, Medford basketball, and Shawsheen wrestling. So our time break is over a little bit. I enjoy the holidays and the new year with my family, but now it is back to the grind and back to work for the next 6 weeks. So we are excited for our winter season. And again, thank you for coming on here today. I'm your host, Anthony Petrellis. Till next time.